Boris, thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Who's Ivan Milat?
Ivan Milat's my brother, my younger brother.
What's it like carrying the Milat name?
Bad. Bad, bad, bad. He was going to kill somebody from the age of 10, I'd say. You know, it was built into him. He had a different psyche. He was a psychopath. And it just manifested itself with, I can do anything, I can do anything.
Boris Milat is about to come clean. We've uncovered stunning new evidence about his brother, and Boris is about to confirm it all.
This is a secret you've kept for 52 years now.
Yes.
But Boris isn't the only one we've discovered keeping this chilling secret.
It's hard for me to understand how 5 decades can go by and you don't mention a word.
Not a word, not a word.
And it's kept a lid on a crime that could have shaped Australia's most notorious serial killer.
Ivan Milat's first victim.
Yes, 100%.
A bloody and brutal attack. The one he got away with.
Did you know about this?
No, not at all. I didn't know anything about this.
So this is the man we believe shot your father.
If this man had been taken off the streets at the time, life would have been very different for a lot of people.
It's more than 2 decades since the bodies of 7 young backpackers were found in the Belanglo State Forest. The gruesome murders horrified Australia and the world. 3 were from Germany, 2 from the UK, and 2 from Australia. Their bodies were found mutilated, face down on the forest floor. A signature characteristic of the killer was that at least 5 of the 7 victims were paralyzed before they were tortured and killed. In 1996, 53-year-old road worker Ivan Milat was convicted of the crimes. The name Milat is now forever associated with one of the worst crimes in Australia's history. But what wasn't known is that Ivan Milat's brutal, sadistic psyche was unleashed far earlier than anyone thought, on a victim no one knew about, until now. In the early 60s, the new suburbs of Sydney were packed with fibro houses, young families, and troubled teenagers. The Milat family lived out west, in Moorebank. Ivan was the 7th of 14 children, a big family. The parents, Margaret and Stephen, had little control.
There was just too many and too much going on in that place, and you know, Dad used to drink a lot, and we had a market garden going and all that stuff. And so we all just by ourselves. The Milats were always basically by themselves.
Boris Milat is 2 years older than Ivan. He's a retired builder, a loner, who ever since his brother was convicted has carried the shame heavily on his shoulders.
He's ruined the whole family. He's taken our name and dragged it, put it on the ground in mud and pushed it all around and then kicked it as well.
What was Ivan like back then? What was his
Demeanour,
psyche?
like?
Yeah, his demeanour, yeah.
Sneaky. You know, like you'd be walking up the road or something like that and there's no one around. All of a sudden Ivan would jump up out of the long grass, you know, and just because he was always playing cat and mouse in some way. And that I remember very well.
Were you concerned about him back then?
Oh, I knew he was on a one-way trip. I knew that. It was just a matter of how long.
Was he sadistic at all?
He was. He'd treat animals and that bad. They'd all boast about they'd go out at night and do things. And, you know, with machetes, I hear tell he cut a dog in half with a machete and all that while he was growing up.
The machete was a favourite of Ivan's, but there were other weapons the Milat children learned to use. Guns were a part of family life. Boris got his first when he was 5.
We played with live guns, cowboys and Indians.
Where'd you get them from?
Dad used to buy them. I'm a believer in guns. And Ivan went one step further. He didn't buy any guns. He stole his first gun. Then he went on to steal all the others.
As Ivan grew up, he'd often boast about his criminal exploits to Boris. First, there were petty thefts and house robberies. Then it escalated. When Ivan was just 17, the skinny teenager pointed a gun at a taxi driver's head.
And he said, yeah, he said, I just stuck a gun in a bloke's thing. And he took the money there, he robbed the money there, he got the money there. And that was it. Soon as the gun got in the hands of that fool, life changed.
Milat was 17, armed and dangerous. He'd already robbed one taxi driver and was planning to rob another. After an extensive investigation, we've discovered that Ivan's next victim would be a young father. His name, Neville Knight. He lived 12 kilometres from the Milat home with his wife Eleanor and 3-year-old daughter Deborah.
When you think about your father, what comes to mind?
Courage.
Courage.
Courage. Courage always comes to mind.
Deborah's dad, Neville, had been a Morse code specialist in the Australian Navy.
He used to like putting me on his shoulders, as dads do, and run up and down with me and feed me and dance with me and whatever to keep me happy.
After leaving the Navy, Neville made ends meet by driving his father's taxi. On Tuesday, March 6, 1962, Neville heads out for his night shift. At just after 10 p.m, he's waiting at a rank not far from his home. A skinny boy gets into the back seat.
Where do you want to go, mate?
The boy says he's looking for an address, but he isn't sure where it is. Neville agrees to help him find it. They drive half an hour through the streets looking for the house. Neville Knight has no idea that his passenger is armed, no idea of the danger he's in. We now believe the boy in the back seat is Ivan. It had been 3 weeks since he'd robbed his first taxi driver at gunpoint. He is about to hold up another.
What's a 17-year-old doing with a gun in the back of a cab?
His intention was to rob the taxi driver of his takings. And what's going through his mind, why is he doing it? It's got more to do with his upbringing than why he's in there. But he's in there to rob money, for whatever reason. What went from there was that gun had a hair trigger, and while I was in the back of that vehicle driving around, I suppose either getting up to Gumption or the opportunity to rob the man of his takings, the gun went off and hit the poor fellow in the back.
The single gunshot went through the seat into Neville's back, lodging in his spine. He can't move his legs, and he starts yelling.
He yelled out, I'm ruined, I'm ruined, I'm ruined, I'm ruined. You've ruined me.
The cab driver.
He said it about 3 to 4 times. The bloke straight away knew he had lost everything in his bottom end. You know, his legs, feelings. He knew it went through his back. He knew he was...
Ivan had paralysed him.
Ivan paralysed him, yeah. And then from there, he got out of the cab and got out of there as quick as he could.
Soon police will be swarming all over this area, looking for the man who shot Neville Knight. But in the darkness, they won't find him.
What were you told at the time?
Just that he'd been shot, a bad man had shot him. That he'd been, in Grandpa's taxi.
The bullet was lodged in Neville's spinal cord, and the once fit and active 29-year-old would be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
Everyone thought he wasn't going to survive. They didn't know for several weeks that he would survive long term, whether he'd even survive the next few months.
The news reports said there appeared to be no motive. No money was taken. The attack was baffling. It was described as either an accidental shooting or the act of a crazed psychopath who simply felt like shooting someone.
This was the newspaper the next day, the front page.
Yeah, he was only a young bloke, wasn't he? Sad.
It's the first time you've seen that, isn't it?
It is. It's the first time I've seen it.
Who shot Neville Knight on March 6, 1962?
Ivan Milat,
And how do you know this?
because he told me so.
He told you.
Yes. Told me the day after it happened.
So what do the official records reveal about the shooting? For more than 50 years, the court papers, the police work, all the documentary evidence surrounding the case have been held in storage in Western Sydney. They make no mention of Ivan Milat. Instead, they reveal police arrested another man for the attack. When Ivan Milat was 17, he secretly confessed to his brother the details of his first violent crime: shooting and crippling a young father, Sydney taxi driver Neville Knight. It's a secret Boris Milat has kept for more than half a century.
Why didn't you go to the police at that stage?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. My thinking didn't go like that then. You know, I was too much of a Milat then.
If what you're saying is true, then
It's true. Everything I say to you, I'd cross my heart on it, I'm telling you, 100%.
this taxi driver is Ivan Milat's first victim.
He's the first bloke that was shot, as far as I know, yes, 100%.
But according to the police records we uncovered, Ivan Milat was never a suspect. Within days of the shooting, police had fixed their sights firmly on another man, Allan Dillon. This is Allan today. He's 74. We found him living a quiet life in a small town on the outskirts of Sydney. He collects watches and knows the value of time.
You had a criminal history, quite a long criminal history.
Yeah, from 15.
Yeah, from 15.
From my age of 18, I was in jail, and the only people I knew was crooks, like, you know.
In 1962, Allan was well known to police. He fitted the description of the person who shot Neville Knight and was living just around the corner from the Knight family.
Is that us?
That's you, yeah.
Which one's me?
I was hoping you'd tell me that.
I'd have to be the bloke
I
that's
think you're the one in the top.
Yeah,
top
that'd be
left
me.
here.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad sort then. What's happened?
Allan's dad had walked out on the family, leaving his mum to raise 4 boys. By 15, Allan was often running away from home.
Over a period of time, sometimes I'd be hungry, and I'd break into shops or something to get a feed, and I went from there.
As the oldest, Allan was protective of his brothers, especially the youngest, Brian. Around the time Neville Knight was shot, Allan was making a living as a petty thief.
What kind of things were you doing back then?
Probably breaking in and stealing out of cars or something like that.
Nothing involving guns?
No, nothing.
A few days after the shooting, Allan Dillon was picked up by police for stealing radios. He was brought here to Long Bay Jail and was being questioned by detectives. First about the petty theft, then, out of the blue, they started quizzing him about the shooting of a taxi driver.
Do you remember what they told you when they came to see you?
I can still remember a lot of it.
So you're in Long Bay, you're in an office somewhere or at a table?
Yeah, took me to one office where the police interviewed you, and one was sitting here like you are, 2 were behind me, and this one here would be asking me questions to get me to sign things.
You confessed twice to the crime.
Yes, I've heard.
Yeah. I have your confessions here.
Well, it's all bullshit. I probably didn't read it, I just signed it.
It's in your handwriting.
Yeah, but oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I still can't remember doing it.
It's in your handwriting, then retyped. Is that your writing?
Yeah.
I've got to ask you a question. Did you shoot Neville Knight on March 6, 1962?
No, I didn't.
Then why did you say you did?
Because they're going to convict me to arrest my brother and charge him with it.
Allan says it became clear to him during the interrogation that police wanted to nab his little brother for the crime. They wanted him to spill the beans on Brian. Instead, he chose to take the rap himself. He says he did it to protect his brother and save his mum from grief she couldn't bear.
Why would you confess to it, though? I mean, it's...
It's your family. And your mum never needed another one of us going the way I went.
Allan was sentenced to 5 years jail, and he did the time here at Sydney's Parramatta prison.
It's been 32 years since you've been here.
It is too.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. I'd rather be out there anyway.
His stretch in jail sent him on a spiral deeper into crime. When he got out, he tried his hand at bank robbery, got mixed up in an underworld murder in King's Cross, and spent the best part of the next 20 years behind bars.
Too late to regret it, but I did regret it. But it's my own doing. I got what I deserve. So.
Eventually, Allan turned his life around. He went straight, got a job at St Vinny's, and until he was contacted by Sunday Night, always believed he'd been protecting his brother Brian when he went to jail. Not once in the years since had he ever asked his brother if he'd really shot Neville Knight.
So for 5 decades, you believed your brother had committed this crime?
Yeah.
And you had covered for him?
Yeah. Till last week, I think it was, or the week before.
So we contacted you?
Yeah.
You thought you had shot the taxi driver?
Yeah. And then I said to him, well, I thought you done it. And he said, no. And then he said, you fair income? I said, what's a fair income? And he just broke down and cried. So...
He had no idea?
No, none whatsoever.
Does it feel like a weight off your shoulders?
It does. But how stupid am I that my brother didn't do it either.
It must be tough knowing that your mum, who will not know this.
Yeah, that'd hurt. Well, she was a good woman, you know.
And she believed this whole time that you would
with me till the day she died.
And there's another terrible twist Allan is about to learn. He has no idea who he may have really been protecting when he took the blame for the shooting of Neville Knight.
The person who actually allegedly did the crime, that's him.
That's Ivan, isn't
Ivan Milat.
it? Jesus.
How does it feel doing time for the crime of what possibly was Ivan Milat's first victim?
That sounds strange, you know, that sounds strange.
Ivan himself had said, oh, well, they got the bloke because he looks like me. He said, oh, but they're blaming someone else. He said, which is good. But I didn't think it was good. But I didn't want to see him go to jail either. You know, I didn't want to see him harmed either. He was my little brother. He hadn't gone on to bigger things.
So why, 52 years later, are you now coming forward and talking about this?
The main object of the thing is bringing closure to the other man. And that's really why I'm talking. And this fella went to jail to protect his brother. To me, that's a lot of heart. There's some good in that man somewhere, you know.
In the last 50 years, have you thought about the bloke who went to jail?
Yes, all the time, all the time. I thought about it as soon as I knew he was charged. I thought about it, how the hell do I fix that?
If you could meet the guy who went to jail, would you?
I possibly would, yes.
What would you say to him?
I would say that I should have spoke up earlier. That's what I would say.
Boris, you can tell him yourself. Meet Allan Dillon.
Where is he?
Hey, mate, how are you? Don't hold yourself responsible.
Good. How you going?
Good, mate. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm a little late.
Yeah, that happens. So,
Yeah.
We can pull up a chair.
So I can see you. Alan, you've heard what I've been saying?
oh, not all of it,
But, okay, I made some pretty big claims here that Ivan shot the bloke.
Yeah.
Did you shoot the bloke?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
But I thought my brother didn't. He didn't either. Yeah.
And was your brother inclined to go and rob taxis?
No, I don't think
No,
so.
no. Well, Ivan was.
Yeah.
And Ivan shot this bloke in the back.
Yeah.
And the reason you were charged from what I can gather, was to protect your brother.
That's right.
I also was protecting him by shutting up.
Yeah, I
And
understand that.
I thought, and it's something, but yeah. You've been on my mind a lot anyhow.
Thanks for coming across.
Neville Knight was shot in the back in his taxi in March 1962. Ivan was 17 years old and beginning his life of extreme violence. Three decades later, Ivan Milat's most infamous crime spree is discovered here. The Belanglo State Forest had become his killing ground. In 1992 and 1993, the remains of 4 women and 3 men, all backpackers, were discovered. Their partially buried bodies were found face down with their hands behind their backs. The murder weapons were knives and guns. Some of the victims had been strangled and beaten, one decapitated. Ivan was arrested on May 22nd, 1994. Personal belongings from the backpackers were found in his home.
We had a person who, despite everything that was going on, the police and everything like that, he still thought he was in charge. And he thought that he would be going home to have tea that night.
Superintendent Clive Small led the police investigation into the backpacker murders. He knows more about Ivan Milat's criminal past than just about anyone.
This taxi driver is Ivan Milat's first victim.
Yes, 100%.
We showed him our interviews with Boris and Allan.
That's him.
That's all.
Ivan Milat.
Jesus.
Ivan's possible involvement in the shooting of a taxi driver is brand new information.
Clive, what do you think of what you've just seen?
This is the first time I've heard these claims, but in what I've seen now, it seems to me that both Boris and Allan were very sincere in the story they're telling.
You believe them?
Certainly on what I've seen here, I would believe them.
Clive not only believes Boris and Allan, he also recognises Ivan's unique signature in the shooting.
One of the features of this case was that the taxi driver, the victim, Neville Knight, was shot in the spine and paralysed. Is that consistent with Milat's methods as you know them?
A number of the victims, most of the victims, had multiple stab wounds to the back around the spinal area, which suggested he was trying to paralyse them while keeping them alive. And that story about the taxi driver being shot in the back, near the spine, was most interesting and similar.
Do you think by getting away with the shooting of Neville Knight, it would have built his confidence, his arrogance?
I think that every time Ivan got away with a crime, his confidence would have built and would have given him this, I'm in control, they can't catch me. It would have reinforced that every time. And even when you look at the crime scenes for the backpackers, what you can see is Ivan spending more and more time at each scene. The murders became more sophisticated. The number of shots that you could find around the crime scene sort of increased. It was as though he was saying, that was good, but next time I can do it, better. And he'd look at ways of making the crime more pleasurable to him.
The unavoidable question is whether history could have been changed if Ivan had been brought to justice all those years earlier.
It would have certainly put him on the map in terms of a serious offender who starts early in life, and then when the next crime occurs and people look at potential suspects, he would be right up on that list.
After examining the case reports, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Julian Parmigiani believes that Ivan may have even set out to deliberately cripple the taxi driver.
Would the plan have been to kill the driver or just to paralyse him?
You look at the final result and you work your way back. The fact is you've got a driver who was paralysed for life, and then you have a series of victims later on who were paralysed. So you can guess probably fairly confidently that the goal was to see whether you can paralyse someone using a firearm. With the subsequent history of thrill killing that we now know about, one really has to question whether that was not a planned act, which had taken some time in the making.
He can't change history, but Boris Milat hopes that by telling the truth now, he will right a wrong, especially for the families of Allan Dillon and Neville Knight.
It's not about the victims so much, they're gone. But you upset the family. Yeah, like your mother. Yeah. You know.
You finished?
He gets quite emotional when he talks about it.
Yeah, I know. Come on, mate. You all right?
How do you feel when you see him like that?
Not nice. For what he's been through. This should bring some closure.
Anyhow, it's all out now and all done. That's it.
After the shooting, Neville Knight went back to school, became a computer engineer and a pioneer for disabled rights. He died in 1998. His family has always believed the man who shot and paralysed him was Allan Dillon. Now Neville's daughter is coming to terms with the knowledge that the real shooter was Ivan Milat.
Is that tough to get your head around?
It is a bit, yes. You know, you grow up with it's like growing up and knowing the sky is blue and suddenly you discover, it's actually been red all this time. It's quite a surprise.
The name Milat is a name that instantly conjures.
It's synonymous with just the worst side of human nature, isn't it? It's synonymous with that thing you just don't want to know about, that horrible black boogeyman that sits over your shoulder. You don't want to know about him and people of his ilk because they don't seem to have human emotion. Something somewhere went very wrong in that man's DNA. I don't know what or how he could be capable of what he's done. And if Dad was the first attempted thrill kill that sort of didn't quite work, but he's one of his early attempts, then, you know, how horrified can anybody be?
While Allan can't get back the time he's done, he's hoping to have the conviction overturned. Because of the infamy of the Milat name, 10 years ago, Boris Milat changed his. He has a girlfriend and lives quietly in country New South Wales. He's relieved that at last, the truth is out.
It was a monkey on me back. It was a load on me back. And I knew one day I have to get rid of it.
Ivan Milat is serving 7 life sentences for the backpacker murders at Goulburn Supermax prison. The hope now is that even though it's taken more than 50 years, there might finally be justice for his first victim.
If Ivan Milat has any bearing on this case, then it's important to know the truth.